Hello everybody, this is Jamie. Jamie's first, she's your
Hi.
first one?
Yes.
Hi.
You said hi. Good job. Say hi.
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 It's good to be here with you.
Jamie was born December 9th, 1985.
Hi.
Yeah. When's your birthday, Jamie?
December 9.
December 9, that's right.
Alright, so you're his mother, and
his
your
mom.
name is
Dr. Susan.
Dr. Susan, and we'd love to hear Jamie's story.
Well, Jamie was born at a maternity center in Manhattan. He was full term, 8 pounds, 2 ounces, 20.5 inches, APGAR score of 9. He was pinked up right away, and he was very healthy. We were able to leave the maternity center within 8 hours of delivery. And basically, he was seen by a pediatrician at 3 days old, just for a checkup, and 7 days old. Subsequently after that, because I had refused vaccinations based on a book I had read called The Dangers of Compulsory Immunizations by Tom Finn. I had read that. It was given to me by my chiropractor at the time. And I decided not to immunize, so the pediatricians were refusing to see him. So basically, he just saw chiropractors, nutritionalists, applied kinesiologists. He was pretty healthy. Jamie got his first cold at 4 months old, and he had little sniffles, and he started swimming, water babies. He was swimming, going underwater, kicking, doing all the normal baby stuff. And at 2 years and 4 months old, he had gotten bit in the eye by a dog. The dog, he didn't know the dog, and nobody was watching Jamie at the time, and Jamie pulled the dog's ear, and the dog bit him in the eye. And at that point, I consulted with a chiropractor, my chiropractor at the time, and I said to him, what should I do? And he said, well, I think because it's a highly vascular area, maybe we should give him tetanus only. So I went to the hospital and I asked them to give him a dose of tetanus. And they said they didn't have tetanus for children. They only had the DPT for children. And they only had an adult dose of tetanus. And I asked them to could they cut down the dose of tetanus? Could they make it a child's dose? They said they could do that, and then I told them I would wait, and I waited 2 hours for them to cut down the dose of tetanus and administer it to Jamie. So at that point, I had been in search of a natural pediatrician that wouldn't necessarily force immunizations on me. And I found this holistic pediatrician who did not give his own children immunizations. So I figured I could really trust him. And our first visit, I wrote down his exact notes. So Jamie's 2 years and 4 months at this point, and he writes, dog bite 2 weeks ago. He has a little bit of fungus on his 5th toe. He's got rhinitis, a runny nose. He's allergic to something. He's had ENT visits for ear problems. History of otitis media. He's neurologically intact. And then what he wrote at the end of his notes was DPT to follow up in 2 to 4 weeks. So that's not what he told me. He actually told me that Jamie would need a follow-up booster for tetanus. And so it was against, I had no knowledge of this, and I was hemming and hawing a little bit because I didn't even want to give him a second dose of tetanus, but I figured, well, he's a boy, he might step on a nail or something, and maybe that might be a good idea if it could hold him for 10 years, well, maybe that would be a wise thing to do. So I figured as long as it was tetanus only, then I would agree to come back in a month and do that. When we returned, May 15th in 1988, Jamie was 2 years and 5 months old. He had a little laceration on his eye prior to that, and the doctor wrote his ENT is normal, his ears are better, his neurology is normal. He was exposed to chickenpox this week. And then he writes, I gave him the DPT and OPV in the left thigh. And I had no knowledge of this. Actually, I didn't find this out until a couple years later, actually, that he had actually had this vaccination. So the next day, Jamie was having fevers and screaming and blank stares. And I assumed it was an ear infection. Although in his notes, he said that ENT was normal. So, but I thought maybe it was a sudden ear infection because sometimes Jamie would cry and he had get fussy if he had an ear infection. So, in July, we were scheduled to go back, but Jamie had been having, during that 2 months, Jamie was still having fevers on and off, 101, 102 fevers, and he really wasn't well since that, and he kept crying in pain, and the ear pain just exacerbated, his ear infections just got worse, and so when we come into this is the third visit to this doctor. He writes in his notes, he's crying with ear pain, moderate retraction of the left ear. He's still smiling. He has impulsive behavior, poor speech, cannot follow directions, could not sit still or play without biting. Otitis media. And then he writes, I gave him the DPT and lidocaine to the right thigh, and he tolerated it well. First of all, you don't give a child who's sick a vaccination, and I didn't know that he was giving him this second DPT. After that, the blank stares increased. The very next day, my ex-husband must have taken him back to the doctor. He was having 101 fever. His heart rate was rapid, and the doctor writes that Jamie now has hyperkinetic behavior and blank stares. Basically, he just said that Jamie needs to have tubes in his ears. That was his, solution for this. So we scheduled Jamie to have a set of tubes put in his ears. After that, we returned. Now Jamie's 2 years and 10 months old, and now he's falling a lot. He fell and he banged his forehead. He had to go get stitches. But the neurology report still says no neurological deficit. This is the hospital saying this. But he keeps losing his balance. And he's got chronic allergies now in all 3 seasons, so the allergies aren't really getting better. And he writes he has loose bowel movements. And then he writes it's because he has a vegetarian diet. Jamie had an organic diet and mostly vegetables and fruits and organic grains and everything, and beans and, organic meats. He had some, but the loose bowels. So he started to have GI symptoms. He started to have gut inflammation. He started to have more balance. It seemed like it really hit his ears hard. And then on October, his regression just kept going down and down and down. And so it was October 31st, Jamie screamed and fell to the ground. And that was the first indication that he was starting to have seizures. Like the blank stares, I didn't know what those were. I didn't realize they were beginnings of seizures. But that year, 1988, he started to have, an episode. So we went to the pediatrician, and he told us to go for a neurological visit and get a CAT scan and an EEG done. On Thanksgiving that year, 1988, Jamie's, now 2 years, 11 months old, just right before his 3rd birthday. He went into the bathroom. My father was shaving, and my father had shaving cream all over his face, and Jamie screamed and fell to the floor. He was out cold he went limp for about 15 minutes. And they called it a generalized tonic-clonic seizure. He had facial twitching the right side. His face and arms and legs went limp. So he was admitted to Westchester medical center for the weekend, and he was put on medication that made him groggy and anorexic and stuporous. He was on that medication for about 4 to 6 months. Then they switched his medication, and they kept switching his medication. They were doing MRIs, they were doing CAT scans. Meanwhile, I still don't know that he's had these 2 DPT shots. It wasn't until a couple of years later when I went back to get the records in 1990 that I actually found out that he had the shots. Then the school starts reporting, nurses saying he's got a short attention span, difficult for him to concentrate, he's not listening, his behavior has become uncontrollable, he's impulsive, he seems to be reading lips. Now they're labeling him as learning disabled, and he needs a one-to-one aid, and now he needs OT and PT. He still can recite his alphabet, he still can count, he still can look at colors, and he still can follow commands at that point. I think part of that is because he didn't have the immunization until he was so much older and had developed some of these skills already, so I don't think he lost everything right away. It wasn't until later on that he completely lost his ability to feed himself and dress himself and toilet himself and speak. That was in about 1990. By that time he was, by the time he was 7, he was completely incapacitated. So it was a continual regression. Kept going. It never got, it got better for moments, but then it, he just kept regressing and regressing.
And the seizures were ongoing.
And the seizures were ongoing, and that's one of the things when you're vaccine injured that they say that they're medication resistant. So you can give them all these medications, and what was happening was every time they gave him a medication, he would get all the toxic side effects and none of the benefits. So he was getting very sick from a lot of these medications, and they couldn't even bring him up to what they called a normal dose. His levels were normal, but he was still having lots of seizures, so they couldn't really find a solution. So when I went back, he was sent down to the Institute for Basic Research and Development in Staten Island, and then they did all these chromosome studies. They did Fragile X, they did magnesium and amino acids, they did B12, they checked his lead levels, they checked organic acids, they checked for regular chemistry and CPK, and basically they came up with non-genetic basis for seizures. And they don't know why he's having seizures, but at that point they label him as generalized convulsive epilepsy and attention deficit disorder. I finally went back to this pediatrician in July of 1990. He's 4 years old, 4 years and 7 months old. And the pediatrician writes in his notes, extremely hyperactive and disobedient, constant hunger, waking at night, 2 to 10 seizures per day, mouthing objects, still in potty training, hyperactive. He has physical and mental retardation. So, 2 years before that, when he was writing no neurological deficits, and now he's physically and mentally retarded, still having 6 seizures a day. So, basically, after that, it was just a series of different things. He used to get into a lot of mischief and a lot of things. So there was a point where he actually went into the pond down near my house, and he went in for a swim, and it was March, and he got hypothermia. And he didn't get any water in his lungs, but he did swallow a little water, and he got giardia. So at that point he went down and down and down. He went got parasites from the water, and he went into failure to thrive. He went down to 39 pounds. So he was pretty, his progression just kept going down. Now there's one thing I did write out. We had these seizure charts, this was in 1992, we used to chart his seizures. But some of the symptoms that came with these seizures, Just want to read you the list. Stiff arms, eyes bulging, open stares, dilated pupils, grinding teeth, losing consciousness, chewing motion, bites his tongue, labored breathing, screaming, moaning, whimpering, red face, cold hands and feet, body shakes. He falls asleep for about 10-15 minutes, sometimes half hour afterwards. He loses his balance, he kicks his legs, he flails his arms, rigid legs, fetal position. The veins come out in his forehead, his eyes twitch, his face and body and arms and legs, they convulse, mostly on the right side, the left side completely flaccid. He has this horrified look, and always before a seizure, he screams a blood-curdling scream.
And he had a seizure just before we came?
He had one this morning, yeah. Yeah, he had one this morning. And he's on lots of medication. He still has seizures. Basically, at this point, they occur every couple of weeks. He's much better. He's not having, 6 a day anymore, but he's having probably about 6 a month at this point. And they usually come in clusters, typically around the new moon and the full moon. They're most intense, 2 days before the full moon.
Parents report that a lot. You hear that a lot.
2 days before the full moon, the day before, and then the day of, and then 2 weeks later around the new moon, and that's the same kind of pattern it's been for a very long time.
Describe Jamie before the vaccines. Tell us about the child you had before he was injured.
Well, he was reading and spelling and doing the map of the United States puzzle. If you asked Jamie, if I said to Jamie at 2.5, Jamie, spell the word night for mommy. Put his hand on his hip and he looked at me and he goes, N-I-G-H-T. Like, don't you know how to spell night? You're the mother, He was reading. One day he got a book and he ripped the book. It was an alphabet book, and he rips the book, and and I didn't know why he ripped the book. I said, Jamie, that was an expensive book. Why did you rip that book? And he had the M folded up, and in his shirt he goes, M, mommy, M. Like, it was like, that's so precious to me. M means mommy, and it was like he was able to communicate even in his limited way. He was swimming. He was jumping off I put him off the low diving board and water babies, and he would jump in, go swim to the side. He was doing a lot of activities. He was doing puzzles. I have footage of him.
Let's look at some footage of him. So this is before he got injured, we're going to see now. Okay, let's see.
Yeah, he's trying to get the paper off of that tape, and so he discovers that he really wants to open it, and so he discovers a way to open it. So he starts rubbing it on the pavement so that he could open it up.
What is it about babies and boxers of any size?
Right? I know. See, now he needs assistance to walk and everything. He's holding on to his carriage, and look at the size of his arms and the way he's filling his carriage up with the grass, and he's holding on with his arms, and he's lifting his legs, he's using his legs, his arms, he's using everything, but he's bound and determined to fill the whole carriage up, and that's why my father never had grass in the yard.
And it's these simple things that you take for granted that they lose, these simple skills.
So at this point he's had the DVT, but he's starting to lose his balance more and more and lose things. Look at him climbing up this plank and without even holding on.
Yeah, you can see he's starting to lose his balance from what he had before.
Yes. He's not interested in his toys anymore. And he just has to put himself on the floor because he can't really stand for very long.
My goodness.
So it was
Look at
really
him
hard
now.
for me to look at all that
I know.
again. Sometimes and then, of course, you blame yourself. You sit there and go, oh, woulda, shoulda, coulda, and you start thinking of everything you could have done differently, So for that doctor to take it upon himself to do that, sort of like, I felt like everything was stacked against me. And then when I went to tell the neurologist that he, after I found out that he was given the shot, and I told them he was injured by that, and they were like, no, he was damaged before, you just didn't notice it, you just didn't know he was. I'm like, I didn't notice he was having seizures, I didn't notice that he couldn't walk, I didn't notice that he was having loose stools and bowel movements. Like, how do I not know? So,
and what's a day like for Jamie now? What's his life like?
well, in the morning, if he's going to have seizures, typically they'll be about 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning.
And he sleeps with
something
you,
like
doesn't
that.
he?
Yeah, he sleeps with me because he's too frightened to sleep alone. Tried having him sleep in his own room, and he'll do it for a few hours, but then he'll flip on all the lights and come in and find me anyway. So, and it's also easier for me because every time he would have a seizure, I'd have to go wake up, jump, run, go into the other room, run in, and meanwhile my heart's pounding. Then I don't get back to sleep at all. At least if I'm next to him, I can comfort him right away. I can pray over him. I can, play music for him. I can sing to him. I can do things that will, calm him down a little bit. And then, and he wets the bed every single night now. He wears adult pull-ups, but every single morning I'm changing sheets and I'm changing the pads and I'm changing blankets and I'm changing. So I can't even start my day until, I've done all this. So there's like 5 loads of laundry a day for me to do.
So you, like myself with my son who's 20, and like every other parent of a vaccine injured adult, child, the future. What's the future?
Well, I'm going to keep on doing it till I can't do it anymore. You want to sing? Yeah? I love you, a bushel, bushel and a peck, bushel and a peck and a hug around the neck, and a barrel and a heap, and I'm talking in my sleep about you.